Wind farms, generating pollution-free electricity for decades, are surprisingly divisive. Paired with battery storage, they're a clear win for sustainable energy, cutting emissions and powering millions of homes. Yet, until the public sees a meaningful drop in their energy prices and bird deaths are at least understood in context to cats, more on that later, scepticism will continue to fuel debates over costs and the potential futile race to net zero. I'll address many of these points in this video, but whichever side of the wind farm argument you stand on, let's stick to some facts and start here. One of the world's largest offshore wind farms approved. This article from the BBC. One of the world's largest offshore wind farms has been approved by the Scottish Government despite concerns from conservationists that it could kill tens of thousands of seabirds. The Berwick Bank project, to be positioned 23 miles off the east coast of the North Sea, could generate enough electricity to meet the annual energy needs of every household in Scotland twice over. Already we've hit a terminology issue. Annual energy needs is not correct. The article likely refers to the annual electricity need of every household in Scotland, not the total energy need of each home. The phrase enough electricity to meet the annual energy needs is likely a journalistic simplification where energy is used colloquially to mean electricity. To clarify the distinction, Scottish households use 3,500 to 4,000 kilowatt hours per year on average for electricity, so that's lighting, appliances, even electric cars. But when looking at the total energy that a house consumes, this includes electricity plus heating, more often than not gas, which can be 3 to 4 times higher, so that's something like 12 to 15,000 kilowatt hours equivalent per household. If Berwick Bank can power every Scottish household, that's 2.5 million, twice over, it likely means 17.5 to 20 terawatt hours of electricity annually, aligning with electricity consumption, not total energy. This is something that's taken me a while to understand. The UK's energy usage is roughly 20% electricity and 80% heat, fuel and other power sources. The majority of our energy still comes directly from fossil fuels for heat and transport. Understanding this energy use mix has been disappointing, as I had previously thought that we were further ahead with renewables. But if you want to know more, I've covered this in my Net Zero Confessions video. Card in the corner if you want to see that, or I'll line it up after this video. Conservation groups had urged rejection of the scheme over its impact on seabirds in the area and called it a very dark day for seabirds. Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes said the approval had been given after extremely careful consideration. Located about 23 miles from the important seabird colonies of the St Abbs Head National Nature Reserve and the base rock, developers SSE Renewables want to construct up to 307 turbines. The project prompted 5 charities led by RSPB Scotland, that's the Royal Society of the Protection of Birds, to urge ministers to reject the plans, which it predicted will kill tens of thousands of seabirds. The Scottish Government said the approval was subject to the company producing a detailed seabird compensation plan outlining how any adverse impacts would be tackled. Seabird compensation plan? How about every seagull in agreement to the wind farm gets free fish and chips for life? Happy days. That plan will need to be approved by Scottish ministers ahead of the project proceeding. Kate Forbes said the decision to grant consent to Berwick Bank is a major step in Scotland's progress towards achieving net zero and tackling the climate crisis, as well as supporting national energy security and growing our green economy. She said it was also an important decision for the renewable sector and the government would continue to work with developers to balance the needs of people and nature. Look, as a strong advocate for renewable energy, solar, wind and battery storage, which offer some of the cheapest and most scalable clean power solutions globally, I'm concerned that UK households are struggling with high energy costs, risking their ability to afford heating and in some cases freezing to death. That's the balance I'd like to see being addressed as the government continues to push forward these long-term sustainable energy strategies. Fuel poverty, defined as households unable to afford adequate heating, has been linked to a significant number of excess winter deaths in the UK. These deaths are often attributed to cold, damp homes, particularly affecting the elderly, infants, and those with health conditions. Broader statistics and anecdotal reports suggest a persistent crisis, with 4,000 to 5,000 deaths annually linked to cold homes in recent years. Addressing this requires urgent action on energy affordability, housing insulation, and targeted support for vulnerable populations. Tragic cases alongside these statistics underscore the deadly impacts of unaffordable heating and poor housing in the UK. The disconnect between the realities of life for a politician and those who live in poverty has never been starker. A huge step forward. UK Energy Secretary Ed Miliband.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Yes, him. We welcome this decision, which puts us within touching distance of our offshore wind targets to deliver clean power by 2030, boosting our mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower. He said it marked a huge step forward in Britain's energy security and getting bills down for good. Meaningful bill reductions are unlikely before 2030 due to transition costs and grid limitations, but post-2030, wind farms and net zero policies could deliver savings if investments in storage and infrastructure accelerate. But here's another spanner in the works. Electricity usage is set to rise. The UK's electricity consumption has been declining since its peak of 357 terawatt-hours in 2005, reaching a low of 266 terawatt-hours in 2023, a 26% drop driven by energy-efficient appliances, higher prices and warmer temperatures. However, demand is forecast to rise significantly in the coming decades due to net zero policies promoting electrification. The Climate Change Committee projects electricity demand to increase from 279 terawatt-hours in 2025 to 692 terawatt-hours by 2050, driven by electric vehicles and heat pumps. And I'll assume more air conditioners, more data centres, more electricity use overall, especially with the advent of AI. This shift, paired with wind farms and battery storage, aims to decarbonise the grid, but high transition costs mean energy bills are unlikely to drop significantly before the late 2030s at best. That's a bit of a bummer if you were hoping for the good old days of cheaper energy. If you can afford to do so, it obviously makes sense to cover your home in solar panels, get battery storage and become your own energy provider. Scottish Secretary Ian Murray said the project had the potential to make a huge contribution to the UK government's growth and clean energy missions and create clean power jobs in Scotland. Scottish Conservative net zero and energy spokesman Douglas Lumsden said wind power was not enough by itself to provide affordable power and energy security in Scotland. Scotland will only prosper with a realistic energy policy that draws on nuclear, oil and gas and renewables, he said. That's not only sensible but also the truth, as I mentioned earlier, with that 80-20 energy split between heat and fuel and electricity use. The hostility of both the SNP, that's the Scottish National Party, and Labour governments to North Sea oil and gas is costing an estimated 400 jobs a fortnight and increasing our reliance on imported fossil fuels. SSE Renewables said the project had the potential to create thousands of jobs and inject £8.3 billion into the economy over its lifetime. Managing Director Stephen Wheeler said the consent was hugely welcome. He said the project could rapidly scale up Scotland's operational renewable energy capacity and help deliver homegrown, affordable and secure clean energy. Energy security also depends on diverse sources and battery storage to manage peak demand, making wind critical but an insufficient solution without complementary technologies and infrastructure. However, Anne McCall, Director of RSPB Scotland, described it as a very dark day for seabirds. It's a terrible decision on a really bad development, she said. Berwick Bank would be catastrophic for Scotland's globally important seabirds, which are already facing alarming declines. In addition, its impacts are so damaging they will make the relative impacts of other wind farms significantly higher. She said she feared the consent could catapult some of Scotland's most loved seabird species towards extinction. She stresses they support offshore wind, but in the right locations. The National Trust for Scotland's Diarmid Herns said the decision was deeply disappointing. More than that, we fear it will also be the cause of significant harm to the seabird colonies of St Abbs, Head National Nature Reserve and elsewhere on the coastline, he added. As we observed in our submission, the proposed mitigations by developers fell far short of alleviating the expected impacts in terms of fatalities and disruption. He said they would be monitoring bird populations at the reserve and would report any impact. Yes, there is evidence that wind turbines kill birds, but the extent and impact depends on context. Studies and data from various sources provide a clear picture of bird mortality rates. For example, a 2015 study in Germany estimated between 100 and 200,000 bird deaths per year from wind farms. However, these numbers are tiny compared to other anthropogenic causes like power lines, which claim the lives of around 38 million birds. Buildings where approximately 676 million birds meet their demise, or the number one barbaric bird murderer, cats, who devour around 1.3 to 4 billion bewildered birds. You might be wondering, what is the ratio of bird deaths from wind turbines to cats? Well, it's approximately 1 in every 11,325. Or for every bird killed by a wind turbine, about 11,325 birds are killed by cats. If you are screaming for the cancellation of wind turbines because of possible bird deaths, yet you own a murderous cat and you understand this data, I'm sorry to say, you're an enormous hypocrite. The news came just days after Donald Trump launched the latest in a series of attacks on the move towards using wind turbines to generate electricity. Speaking on his visit to Scotland, he said, "You fly over and you see these windmills all over the place, ruining your beautiful fields and valleys and killing your birds. And if they're stuck in the ocean, ruining your oceans. Stop the windmills." The US president is a long-standing critic of wind turbines, having fought and lost a long battle at Holyrood and in the courts to prevent a wind power development being built in the North Sea off Aberdeen. It's worth noting though, a 2-year study at the Aberdeen Bay site, conducted with the British Trust for Ornithology, found no bird strikes, suggesting the impact on avian populations may be minimal at this location. Trump argued that the project, which included just 11 wind turbines, would spoil the view from his golf course at many. And of course I have to cover this point. The argument that wind turbine blades can't be recycled but are buried in landfills is flawed because it oversimplifies a complex issue and ignores ongoing advancements. Whilst it's true that old fiberglass blades were often landfilled due to recycling challenges, modern technologies now enable recycling. Blades can be repurposed into materials like cement or composites for construction. Companies like Vestas and Siemens Gamesa have developed recyclable blades, and facilities in Europe and the US are scaling up blade recycling. Landfilling is decreasing as circular economy solutions grow, and compared to fossil fuel waste, wind turbine blades, a small fraction of total waste, have a negligible environmental impact, making the argument exaggerated and outdated. Do you think wind farms' clean energy benefits outweigh their minimal environmental drawbacks compared to the oil industry's massive ecological toll? I hope this video has given some nuance to wind farm development, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Will, this is the Tesla Jigsaw. Thank you patrons, thanks for watching, bye for now.